welcome to Frostbites podcast. My name is Minna, and as usual, I'm coming to you from northern Finland. And this is my channel about my crafty life, mostly knitting, but sometimes, like today, also about sewing. It's been a long time since I last recorded a normal episode, and I'm so sorry that you had to wait for so long. Filming an episode hasn't been my priority this spring, but now I'm back. It's the last week of my holiday, and I finally decided that now is the time to film a new episode for you. I have quite a few finished objects, both knitting and sewing, and yeah, I think I just keep it as simple as that because otherwise it would be too long episode. But first, I want to announce the winner of my 1000 subscribers giveaway, which I announced early March, I think. So it is long overdue, and I'm sorry that you had to wait for that as well. But I haven't forgotten it. Actually, I have the prize here. Like I said, there will be something from Finland and also from Edinburgh. So from Edinburgh, I bought this little tea towel, which has pictures of knitting related things and also some of the sites in Edinburgh. And then there will be a little tin with moomins in it. It's wrapped and I don't want to take it out of the wrapping so you can't really see it. But there's a picture of the moomins. And then I am going to include this little button. It's a ceramic button shaped like a mitten, and it is from a potter or a ceramic artist from quite near to my town. Savi Jonttu is the name of the artist or her company. And then finally, I want to include 2 skeins that I have dyed with natural dyes in it. The pink one is dyed with madder and avocado, and the green one is dyed using reed, I think, in English. And these are both silk and merino 50-gram skeins. So this little set will go to the winner, and I will put the winner's name because I forgot to look it up before I started filming. I will put it here on the screen. So congratulations, and can you please get in touch with me via direct message on Instagram or direct message me on Ravelry. I am Finfrost on both of those places. And let me know what your mailing address is so that I can send out the package for you. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to some finished objects. First up, I have a line of sweaters and cardigans. Here is the lovely pile. And the first one I'm going to show you is my Magnolia sweater, which is a design by Camilla Wad. It is from line issue 4, and I knitted it in this Rauwerk wool 2-ply yarn that I ordered last autumn, I think. It's their 2-ply, it's their newer yarn, I think, and it is 100% merino wool from a single flock in Munich, and it's a sport weight yarn. And in the pattern, Camilla has used one strand of just some wool and then one strand of mohair, I think, but I only used this more rustic looking yarn and left out the mohair, and I think it looks really nice that way too. So as you can see, there is the lace pattern in the hem, also in the cuffs, and a long twisted ribbing in the sleeves, and the top part is a yoke construction, a round yoke, and I think I knitted the yoke just a little bit longer than what it called for. I was comparing my work with another sweater that I had that I liked the fit of, and I decided to make the yoke a little bit longer, and it worked out just fine. I really enjoy wearing this. We've had quite a cold summer in Finland, so I've been wearing this also in the summer, and it's really, I love the yarn. It's rustic but really soft at the same time, and I think it will soften even more when I wear it. And I love the beautiful natural color of it. I bound off the hem differently than what the pattern called for. I did the usual thing I quite often do. I did the Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, but I knit it from the wrong side, so it creates this almost like an I-cord looking edge. Same on the sleeves. And there's a tutorial, or not exactly a tutorial, but there's a little video on my channel on how I do that if you want to check that. It's quite a few videos back, I think, sometime last spring that I filmed that. And this time I decided to mark the back of the neck. It doesn't look very pretty, but it's just on the inside of the sweater. You can't see it outside, because quite often I find it a bit hard to determine which is the back and front when I'm putting the sweater on, even though in this sweater I probably wouldn't have needed it because the shaping is quite obvious, but sometimes the neckline shaping is quite even on both front and back, so I think I'm going to keep on doing a little mark at the back neck, so that it makes easier to determine which way the sweater goes. And also, some of you might know, if you follow me on Instagram, I sometimes stitch this contrasting stitch in my knitwear. It is an initiative started by Margot, who is Studio 101 on Instagram. She has a son who is diagnosed with a rare disease, and I also have a rare disease with my alopecia, which means that I've lost my hair. And the rare stitch draws attention to people with rare diseases, and I sometimes add that to my knitwear. You can read more about it if you search the hashtag the rare stitch on Instagram. And then another line knit that I have done was again a test knit. Those of you who have followed me for a longer time know that I do quite often test knitting for Line magazine. And this is the latest one that I can share. So this is the Lakka cardigan by Marjorie Martin from the latest Line magazine issue, is it 8? I think it is. Yes. Line magazine issue 8. And here is the design on the magazine. Lakka means cloudberry in Finnish. And it was an interesting construction. I have done one baby cardigan a long time ago in the same way. So it is knitted sideways. And the shaping for the yoke is made with short rows. So you start with the button band and then continue working sideways, and you knit the sleeves on the same go, and you continue around, and then once you finish you have knitted on the button band as well. I used Tulliver yarns, British Masham and Blue-Faced Leicester. It's a DK weight yarn, and I ordered a sweaters quantity from them in Jyväskylä Knit Festival last summer, and when I placed my order I didn't have a plan on what I'm going to use it for, but I just made an estimate of a sweaters quantity and ordered that. And then when I started the test knit, I was a bit unsure if I had enough yarn, but I wanted to use this yarn anyway, and then I thought that it should be enough, probably. But it became quite clear, I think somewhere on the first sleeve, that I wasn't going to have enough. And because it's both naturally dyed and hand dyed yarn, I knew that I was not going to be able to get any more of the exact same colorway or from the same batch. And I was wondering what I should do. I contacted Tulliver Yarns and they said that they can send me more skeins, but they of course can't guarantee that it's the same color. But I said that it doesn't matter as long as it's the same color. If the dye lot is different, then I'll figure it out. And once I knew that I was going to have more yarn coming in, I also decided that I'm going to do a bit of shaping for the bottom part of the sides of the cardigan, because when I was trying it on I felt that my hip area was too tight. and I decided that I needed more room for my hips for the cardigan to fit me more nicely. So I decided to do some short rows also um, on the side, kind of like the side seam. And then I continued as the pattern is written. And then at some stage in the back, I knew that I had to change the colors for the new yarn somewhere in the back, and I wanted it to be in the middle, just in case there is a strong color change. And I decided to first alternate skeins every other row once I introduced the new yarn. And then for the middle part, I used only the new yarn, and then I alternated with the old one again. And I think you can't really see it in real life. I don't know how it looks on the screen, but when you're wearing it, it just blends in. It doesn't matter. If you really look closely and if you know, you can see where I've alternated the skeins and where the a little bit darker part is. But I think it worked quite well in the end. Let me just get one of my notebooks. Following the pattern required a lot of concentration, and I didn't want to be looking at my phone or my tablet or wherever I had the pattern all the time, especially if I was taking the knit with me somewhere. I wanted to come up with some sort of system that I knew where I was in the charts, where I was in the short rows, because some of the short rows were shorter than the others, and there was a certain sequence to that. So I decided to make a little chart for myself. First of all, I drew the chart for the bubbles and the yoke pattern in my notebook to keep track of that. And then on the next page on my notebook, I made this really messy looking diagram, if you like. So, do I remember anymore? I had different colored stitch markers to indicate the different stages where you had to turn for the short row. And I wrote them from the pattern in the order that I had to do the short rows, like one whole repeat with the different short rows, like blue, purple, black, white, purple, black, and so on. And every time I did one short row, I marked it here, so I could know if I had to stop knitting, and when I picked it up the next time, I knew exactly where I was with the short rows. And in the same way, I made these little boxes, which are now almost all colored in. You can probably see it better here. This is for one of the charts. So I marked a little line every time I had completed one row from the chart. And yeah, and then there was a different sequence for the short rows in the sleeves, so I had another one here to mark that. And I think that's it. Yes, so it required a lot of attention to do that, but the knitting, after I made my notes and my diagrams, it went smoothly. It was, I didn't need anything else than my notebook to go with me once I got the system in my head and on the paper. I will say that I haven't really checked my final measurements after blocking, but for me it's quite oversized, especially because I did the shaping, but I really feel that I needed that for my hips so that the ease was even throughout the whole cardigan. Otherwise, it would have been straight. Some of the test knitters made cropped versions, which I probably would have liked more in the end, but I think it's still a very wearable piece for my wardrobe and my taste. Because of the construction, I felt that the button band flares a little bit. I should have probably used or casted, I should have probably cast on my stitches a bit tighter. But it's really hard to determine that when you're beginning the work. But I think, yeah, the cast on edge is a bit more stretchy than the bind off. Well, maybe not. Maybe they are quite equal. But I'm thinking I might add a little crochet edge on both button bands to bring it in a little bit. I did that already for the neckline because I felt that it was really loose for my liking, and I like my necklines to be quite close to my neck. And it also gave a little bit more structure for the whole piece because the whole piece hangs from this area, from your shoulders and your neckline. So I think that was a really good thing to do in the end. I didn't even bother making it invisible. You can probably see the chain here on the neckline. But it blends in when you wear it, you don't really see it. And for the buttons, I think I might change these because these are quite heavy. These are ceramic buttons that I bought somewhere in some craft slash yarn shop in the north. I was traveling somewhere and I saw that shop, and they sold these cute buttons, handmade buttons. But they are quite heavy, and because the yarn is so drapey and the button band is already a bit flared, I feel that the buttons are too heavy for this garment. And maybe also a bit too contrasting to what I like, because the yoke here is the main, should be the main focus point. I think the buttons take away from that now that they are so contrasting, so I might change them eventually into something that blends in more with the color of the cardigan. But other than that, I really love this bobble pattern. It's so tactile. I loved knitting it, even though it was a lot of work making the bobbles. There are quite many of them, and it goes all around. But it's so beautiful, and it feels so cozy. Another wonderful linette design, I have to say. And in summertime, I can also use this as like an overcoat when the weather is a bit colder. And then finally, well, not finally, but out of the sweater section, my Soldotna crop, which is a t-shirt kind of cropped sweater designed by Caitlin Hunter. I'm sure most of you have already either knitted it or seen it somewhere. It's a beautiful round yoke again with a color work on top. I decided to omit the color work dots on the body just because I don't really like knitting color work. I love how it looks, but it's always a struggle for me to finish a color work yoke. So I didn't want to do the little dots for the body. I used some skeins from Eden Cottage Yarns, her Titus DK, and the grey one here is Kettle Yarn Company's Islington DK. So 4 colors, and I finally got to use some of the yarns that I didn't have a clue of what I was going to make out of them. And because it only used 3, maybe about 150 grams for my size, you can't really get anything, you can't really get a full sweater out of that amount of yarn anyways. And I'm really pleased with the result. I've been wearing it this summer already. Like I said, it hasn't been too warm here. It's been just perfect when a normal t-shirt isn't enough, but it's also not too hot and heavy like a long-sleeved sweater or cardigan. And it's really nice to wear with dresses because it's cropped, and I actually have sewn a couple of dresses this summer just to go with this sweater. I think other than omitting the dots in the body, I followed the pattern. Yeah. I knitted as long as I had yarn, and I had just a tiny amount left. So I used all of the pink yarn I had from the 50-gram ball, and then out of the white and green I have a bit more but not much left, and then the grey one used that they were just leftovers from another project, so I don't know how much of the grey I used, but it wasn't much because it's only a few rows here and then this arrow motif. I think yes, that was my sweater, my finished sweaters. And then I brought my box of socks because I'm not sure which ones I have shown you and which ones I haven't. And even if I have shown some of these, it was such a long time ago. So a Finnish podcaster, Nonnu Neuloja, is hosting a Finnish version of the box of socks knit along, which is called Sukkalaatikko. And I got this beautiful box for my socks. And the idea is to knit 12 pairs during a year by the end of this year, and get a beautiful box for them and store them in the box once you finish them. And then at the start of next year in January, you can start using your socks. So I'm a little bit behind. I have finished 4 pairs, but already the box of socks looks really nice. And these are my socks. This pair is made using the Vanilla is the New Black by Anne Fletcher. And this is probably the best fitting heel for my foot that I have come across. And I used some hand-dyed yarn, which I got from the Get Your Yarn Wishes Granted. And then the next pair is this one. Some leftover yarns from La Bien Aimée BFL sock yarn. I've striped 2 colors here and used a third one for the toes, cuffs and heels. And I did the true afterthought heel where you don't need to put in a waste yarn, you just need a tube and then cut in, or is it the cut in heel? I can't remember. It's the Kirby Werby tutorial on YouTube if you want to look it up. I really love this color combination. They are beautiful. And then this pair, same heel as the previous one. And this yarn is Twisted Finch, Blue-Faced Leicester High Twist. And the colorway is Fossil. And I got this yarn from Langakalpatititu maybe a year or 2 ago. Just really basic sock. I've noticed that now that I have enough hand knit socks to wear every day, I noticed that I am lacking in darker colors. So this is probably my second more neutral and dark colored hand knit socks that I have. The other ones are waiting for mending because there's a hole in the heel. And then finally, this pair, also the same afterthought heel. And here I don't have the tag here, but it's opal yarn, opal sock yarn from the Claude Monet series. It's based on the painting with the lily pads in the pond, I think. And there's a bridge, and I can't remember what the painting is called. But anyway, you probably know what I'm talking about, and you might have seen the yarn already. So that's my 4th pair. I have a couple of pairs on my needles as well. And they are my handbag socks, if you like. The kind of socks that I just take with me everywhere, and if I have a chance to knit, I knit on them. I knit a few rows on them. But I'm not actively working on them. I think that's all for the knitwear. And then I also have, pardon me, I've been sewing quite a lot this summer holiday. First of all, I made a linen dress, which I'm wearing. It's a sleeveless dress about knee length, and I drafted the pattern myself. I wanted it to go with cropped sweaters, even though I don't have any other than this one, but I'm sure I will in the future. I used a pattern that I have made at a pattern course as a base, but I changed it a little bit. I shaped the I think the armholes a little bit, and actually it was a pattern that I made for a tunic, and it was just a one piece, but I wanted to have this ruffled hem, and I just lengthened the hem a little bit, and I think I did some alterations for the width also, because I was a bit limited with the fabric. So this was kind of my prototype to find the perfect, or to make a perfect linen dress pattern. And I really, really like this dress. I love the fabric. It's something that I bought from our local craft fair a couple of years ago. I don't even remember who sold it to me or what company has made it, but it's really nice, quite lightweight, and I had some leftovers. So if you follow me on Instagram, you have seen already what I made out of the scraps. I made one little kitchen towel, and then two little project bags that I gave as gifts to my friends at Jyväskylä Knit Festival. And I have like this much fabric left, I think. Just a couple of thin strips. So I was quite happy that I was able to make so many things out of that material. Before I start sewing my linen dresses, I wash them and then put them also in the dryer, because I also want to be able to dry them in the dryer when they are finished, because I really like how linen feels and looks after it's been dried in the dryer. It's really soft, and it has this uneven surface, which I really like. And then, was it this week or weekend, when I made the second version of the perfect linen dress in this checked linen that I bought from Kässäkerho Pom Pom. I ordered the fabric and they brought it to Jyväskylä Knit Festival, so I could fetch it from there. And I made only little tweaks to the pattern for this one. I shaped the armholes a little bit more, and then for this version I wanted to make the waistline, or the start of the hem, a little bit lower. So it's a bit different style, but almost the same as this one. And it's also longer. It's about to my calves, I think. And I think I have now the pattern for a perfect linen dress. And what I did with both of these dresses, because I'm lazy, sometimes I take the easier way. I have done this once before last summer, also for a linen dress, that I first shrink the actual material in the washing machine and in the dryer. Then I cut it and sew it, and instead of putting an interfacing and interfacing and facing, because I don't really like, it's really hard to attach nicely, and especially if you use a dryer, then the facing quite easily doesn't stay where it's supposed to, and I want to have my linen dresses carefree so that I don't have to be ironing them all the time. I, instead of the facing, I put a bias tape binding for the neckline and the armholes. But you have to be careful with that. I used the narrower one, the ready-made that you can just buy in any fabric store. You don't want to stretch the main material. That's the first thing to be aware of. So when I pin it in, especially in the curvy areas, I like to how should I describe it? I want to tuck it in a little bit more, so that it doesn't ruffle, but it brings the neckline in a little bit. And then also when sewing, you have to be careful not to stretch it. And then when you stitch it here, well, every time I iron it carefully after each step, after pinning, after sewing, and then I pin the lower edge and I iron it. And when I pin the lower edge, because it's a larger curve compared to the seam, I stretch the binding a little bit with my hands, and then also when I iron it, I make sure it lays flat in the curved areas. And while sewing it, it usually stretches a little bit, and when it's done and you have finished sewing, the neckline usually stands up a bit like this. But I try to iron it back flat. It doesn't fix the problem completely, but then when I finish the whole dress, I wash it again and put it in the dryer, and that shrinks the bias binding a little bit because it hasn't been washed and the linen has been washed. So it brings it in a little bit more, and I think I've been lucky. It has worked out really nicely. It doesn't stand up anymore when I wear it. And the same with the armholes. And I'm using just some old bits and pieces that I found. I didn't have anything that matched the pink color in this dress, so I chose a light blue instead, which goes quite nicely with the stripes. And I made sure when I was sewing it that it really doesn't show on the outside, so I think it's fine. And also for this one, I think I have different colors, different colored bias tapes here somewhere. I can't remember, but anyway, I use just short bits that I have left, so I don't have to buy a new bias tape. But I think it's important to use the thinner bias tape. I think this is about a centimeter and 1 or 2 millimeters wide. The wider one might not work because you can't really stretch it that much so that the outer curve would sit nicely. That's what I think. Anyway, I'm really happy with these dresses and I'm really looking forward to warmer weather. so that I'm able to wear these. Today it is a bit warmer. I think it's about 18 degrees today, and next week when I'm going back to work, of course, it's going to get hotter. So I will be wearing my new dresses then. One more sewing project that I want to show you is this project bag that I made for myself. I just wanted, I felt like sewing something, and I decided to use this fabric that I waxed with beeswax when I was making my range backpack. It was just an experiment, and I wanted to see, because I had some melted wax left from waxing the backpack materials. I wanted to see how it would work with a thinner cotton fabric. And this fabric is some old vintage Finlayson cotton that I had. It's from my grandma's old stash, and I've used it for a million things already. And these are the last bits I think that I have left. I might have some with, it's also the same gray fabric, but it has flowers on it. I think I have that fabric left a little bit more. But the single colored gray fabric is, I think this is all I have or had. So I used the piece that I had for the bottom of the bag. So this is the waxed fabric. It's a bit stiffer and also a bit different, a bit darker in color compared to this bit here, which is not waxed. I wanted to combine different elements from my favorite project bags in this one. So you probably noticed that it's got a little bit of the fringe bag feel to it. And I also have another bag that I really like. This is a Minook bag that I got from Edinburgh Yarn Festival. Actually, most of the measurements and the ways this is constructed is what I used for the grey one as well. But the handles, I find this kind of handles are not as useful as the one here on one end. So that's why I put the handle here. And I like the drawstring closure. And for the inside, let's see, there is, I lined it with another vintage fabric that I had. So I made one larger pocket for the inside in here, and then on the other side it's the same size piece as the other one, but I divided it so that there is a larger pocket here, and then two smaller ones for a pen or a crochet hook or whatever you need. I actually have a pen here. And it's a boxed bottom, so it stands up quite nicely, and especially because the bottom is waxed, it stays up quite nicely, even though the fabric is quite thin, and I haven't used any interfacing or batting. I think it's really nice, and I like the way the waxed fabric looks. It's a bit wrinkled because I had to turn it in, outside in. Is it that way when you sew it, and then when you finish it, it leaves these marks on the fabric, but it doesn't matter. I quite like the way it looks. And for the drawstring, I use some of this tape that I had in my stash. I've been collecting all kinds of bias tapes and ribbons and whatever you find, and at flea markets, and sometimes from sales and whatnot. So I like to have quite a large stash so that when I want to sew something, I don't have to run into the shops to try to find things that I need. And I feel like this summer I've been able to use from my stash quite nicely. So that's a nice project bag which fits a sweater project quite nicely, which leads me into my works in progress. I've been working on this Zweig sweater for a while now, since I finished my last test knit in June, I think. I started working on this sweater a little bit before Jyväskylä Knit Festival, because I wanted to finish the yoke before the festival and have the body as my festival knitting. And now I'm working on the sleeves because, again, I don't know how much yarn I have, if it's enough to make a full length body and sleeves. So I stopped working on the body. It's still on the needles and the yarn ball is here inside because I didn't want to cut the yarn. So I will have that on hold until I have finished my sleeves, to know how much yarn the sleeves require, and then for the rest of the yarn I can knit as long as I have the yarn left for the body. I've had this yarn in my stash for 2 years, I think. I bought them from Jyväskylä Knit Festival 2 years ago, and the same year in the autumn Caitlin's Zweig pattern came out, and ever since I've known that I wanted to use the yarn for that sweater, but I haven't had time or inspiration to start it sooner. But now I'm hopping on the Zweig bandwagon, which went by probably a year ago already, but it doesn't matter. I really like the color combination, and I like how the yarn works for this pattern. And the yarn is Lanitium ex Machina. She's a Finnish dyer, and it's her Pure Merino 310 Superwash Merino High Twist. And when I bought this yarn from the festival, it didn't have any colorway name, so I don't know what these colors are called, but I think they're beautiful. The darker color is like an eggplant color, and then this one here is like a brownish pink. Really nice colors, and I'm really looking forward to finishing this knit. I'm already itching on casting on something new, a new sweater or a cardigan, but I'm trying to finish this one before I start the next one. That was actually the back, and this is the front. And I think, yes, I think I'm past halfway of the sleeve, so not too much to go anymore. I'm using my small circumference circulars. Is it 12-inch or something? And I really like them for the sleeves. I've learned now how to hold them. It takes a while to get used to, because the grip is so different than when you do magic loop. But now that I've mastered that, I really enjoy using these. It's a bit tricky for the cabling. I cable without a cable needle, and because the metal tip is so short, it's a bit hard to get a good hold of the needles when you're doing the cables, but it works anyway. And I really like how the pattern looks in hand-dyed yarn. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you or show is another work in progress, which is in my beautiful new bag, which my friend Mari gave me. And I am using the Fiber Company's Cambria yarn, which is a blend of brown masham wool, merino and mohair. I haven't used this yarn before, and I'm doing a beta knitting for the Fiber Company. So they sent me this yarn, and this colorway is called Cowberry, which I was surprised to find out that it means lingonberry. And it's a beautiful color, and I am making a hat out of it. So the beta knitting is for a hat called Lord's Seat, and it is by Ines Sang, and it's for their Foundations collection, Autumn Winter 1920. And I have only just started this. I haven't been working on this in a couple of weeks, I think. There are twisted stitches and a bit of cabling going on, and the yarn is really nice. I would love to work more with this yarn. I think a sweater in this yarn would be perfect. It's soft and it feels really nice when you're knitting on it. I don't really have the words to describe how it feels, but it's a really nice feeling yarn. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about this, other than the pattern will be published sometime in the autumn. I think that's all my makes that I was going to share with you. I hope to get to a bit more regular schedule with my podcast. And lastly, I wanted to say a few words about the very important issue that has been going on in the knitting community. I want to express that I want my social media platforms and spaces be safe for everyone, no matter what your skin color is, what your religion is, what your sexual orientation is, or whatever. I want to welcome you all, and I want to provide an inspiring space for everybody, but most of all, a safe space for everybody. And I have been totally horrified reading the events that have been going on, and I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. I don't tolerate any kind of hate speech, and I wish that we can all work towards a safer community that we talk about so much and we all care about so much. And it all starts within yourself. You and I know that I really have to work hard on that. I've been blind for many things, even in the recent past, and I have to work on many things still. And I think it's a process that takes time, but it only starts when you acknowledge your own privilege and when you open yourself up to hear the experience of other people. And it's not easy, it's not comfortable, but it has to be done. And I hope that all of you will start the journey if you haven't already. So I think it was important for me to say that also here on my YouTube channel. And I hope that you respect that. Okay, I think that is all this time. I'm hoping to see you again soon. And if you like the video, please subscribe. And you can find my show notes in my Ravelry group, which is the Frostbites podcast group, which can be found on the groups tab on Ravelry. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. And in the end, I think I will put some clips from my summer knitting events and adventures that I've been to. See you next time. Bye.